What is going on, everyone, and welcome to some more of the Not Early Enough 2022 rankings discussion. For most of us, we are working our way towards the trade deadlines in our C2C leagues. If you're a team that looks like it can't win this year, it's time to sell off some of those high-end college producers for some freshman draft picks. Austin, as you can see right here, is sitting next to me. We are going to talk about some of the running backs for the 2022 class, the freshmen's 12. We're going to talk about our top 12 here and kind of give you guys an idea of why you should be trading for some of these picks. Not to give away too much, but both of us think this is going to be a really good class. So I'm going to kick it to you first. Obviously, everybody should know who you are, Austin, but if they don't, tell everybody who you are, and then let's talk about just kind of like your overall thoughts on this class.
Yeah, what's up, guys? It's Austin. Do the C2C pod with Colin every week. And then I'm always writing and picking fights in the Discord and all sorts of stuff over at Campus to Can't. So you can find all my stuff over there. That's who I am. Yeah, I mean, it's a really good freshman class, guys. So I'm pretty excited for it here.
Yeah, you're about to see a lot of really good players, and that's only the top 12. I've got like probably 15 or 16 guys that I like, not as much as the top 12, but there's a lot of running backs I like in this class. How would you compare this freshman running back class, to say the 2021 and 2020 running back classes?
Oh, man, I think it's the best of the three. This past year's was pretty weak, and we were pretty consistent. I think all of us in saying that it was Travion Henderson. You're Mr. Buckeye there, and then it was Will Shipley was probably consensus number 2, LJ Johnson, and it was a lot of guys that nobody really felt that good about. Like my Travion would be the number 1 back in this class, but after him, the next 4 guys would all be 2022 freshmen for me as I compare the list. So that kind of gives you an idea just of how good I think this class is, and the depth is insane.
Yeah, and again, we're just talking about the running back position. That's not even talking about, there's a lot of quarterbacks I like in this class. There's pretty good depth of wide receivers as well. I mean, and I feel like maybe we say that, or we don't. This is kind of our very first year of really diving into doing this and making it as public as it is. But I feel like a lot of people say this for the NFL draft classes. Are you at all worried that maybe it's what have you done for me lately? And we're going in and watching what these guys are doing. A lot of these guys are junior stuff. We were just talking off air. Some of these guys are getting their senior stuff now uploaded. Some of these guys didn't even play last year due to COVID. So it's a lot of trying to play catch up. Is there any fear at all that this may be like a little bit of what have you done for me lately? Or are you just that sold that these kids are all just going to be really good?
There's always a concern. Think about how much uncertainty there is when these guys come out of college, and we have NFL draft capital for some of them to kind of try to predict, how good we think they're going to be. This is like 10 times more difficult. So obviously, I would never just wholeheartedly just buy into somebody else's rankings or anything like that. But I mean, just looking at how they are right now, the tools that they have, like the top 4 guys in my list, they're all 205 to 215 pounds already. Like they have the size, they have the tools, things like that. There's no projection there. I don't have to, hope that people are gaining 20 pounds. I mean, things like that, this class has a lot of. And so that's why I think that I feel better about this class than last year, where it was a lot of tinier guys.
Yeah. Yeah, we've seen, we've talked a lot about it on Devy Debate that at least the past couple years, it seems like the NFL is shifting, not necessarily completely away from those guys, but maybe not valuing them as much as we thought that they might. So it's definitely good to have those guys with the weight. Last but not least, we joke more about this in the Discord. You are a notoriously tougher grader than I am. Maybe it's because I don't like to be mean to people. So I'm like, well, I like what this kid does. So, but you're a tougher grader than I am. With that being said, how do you split the tiers, and how many tiers are we going to talk about today? We're just going to talk about our top 12. So how many in these top 12 are split into how many different tiers?
Yeah, I do like being mean. So that is the difference between the two of us there for sure. So mine are split. I'm more generous with the high school kids than I am coming out of college, because for a lot of these kids, the question isn't what can and can't they do. It's what have we seen them do versus what we haven't seen them do. So a lot of them are never asked to catch the ball in high school, for example. I'm not dinging guys for that now. 4 years from now, when they're coming out, if they still haven't caught any passes, maybe a red flag. Things like that I'm still pretty generous on. But of the players we're going to talk about today, I have 4 tier 1 running backs, which is a lot. That would rival the 2020 rookie class with Jonathan Taylor, DeAndre Swift. That I had 4 tier 1 guys when they came out of college that year. I have 4 tier 2 players. I project them to have a Chris Carson-esque fantasy career. That's kind of the face I put on that tier, is that level of a running back. And then my tier 3 are guys that I still think you want on your rosters. They can spot fill in for you if they get in a favorable situation. Maybe you get a nice year or two out of them. I mean, we're only going to talk about 12 tonight, so we're going to talk about 4 guys, but I have 6 in that tier total. That's a lot for me. That's 14 total backs that I think are going to be majorly dynasty relevant at some point in the future. And they're all obviously, hopefully, going to be big producers for you in college as well.
Yeah, okay, so we're not as far off as I thought we were going to be. I have 10 in my 1 and 2. I have 4 and 1 as well, though we have one major difference in our tier 1. And then tier 2, I have 6, and then the rest of mine are tier 3. I have 15 altogether that are my top 3 tiers. Now, I have only looked at 22. How many have you looked at?
I have 37 running backs I've
Okay.
fully graded and have notes on, and then another 5 or 6 that I've seen enough of to slot them in somewhere. So around 45 right now total. That
All
it's
right,
by
so
far the
that's
position I have the most of this year because they've been so good. I just want to keep watching them.
Sorry, I was reading
Okay.
something that was not important to what we're talking about. All right, so let's go in and talk about your number 12. So I base this almost completely on your rankings. We are fairly close in a lot of them. This first guy we're going to talk about, though, is our major difference outside of one player that I have in my top 12 that I don't know if you even have ranked or where you're at. So we'll talk about him in a minute. But let's talk with Gavin Sawchuk. He's committed to Oklahoma, played at Valor Christian High School. For those of you who don't know, Valor Christian High School is also where Christian McCaffrey played. He does get a lot of comps to McCaffrey. I don't agree with that comp at all, but I do like Sawchuk overall. So let's kind of dive in and get his stats right here: 404 carries, 3,000 yards. Again, this is from last year, so I don't have anything senior wise in here right now. You can see he's been very productive for the past couple years. Last year, I believe he only played in, it was 6 or 8 games. I can't remember now off the top of my head, but still, he's been very productive. You can see he needs, I think my biggest knock on him is some of the receiving stuff, but even then, 31 receptions, 312 yards, and 3 touchdowns is pretty good. The biggest difference with us here, and again, this is the guy, is you have him as your RB12. I have him as RB4. I really like him. Now, I knew this was going to be one of our biggest separators. You and Alfred are both really don't. Although Alfred, I think, is like almost right in the middle of us. I think Alfred, last I checked, and I don't know how long it's been since he's updated his, I think he had him at like 7. So
Okay.
he's like almost right in between the two of us and where we are on him. But just kind of like, give me your thoughts on Gavin. What I'm going to do while we talk, guys, for those of you, well, I don't know why I said that because it's not going to go to a podcast. We're going to play some of their highlights as we're talking about them. And then we'll kind of just go over and talk about their traits after we're done doing that. So go ahead, Austin. Give us kind of your breakdowns here on Gavin Sawchuk.
Yeah, so usually I start with the positive, but what I'm just going to say here and why I think I have him lower than apparently you and Alfred do. There, as I said earlier, there are so many backs in this class that I don't have to guess if they're going to gain the weight or not. That's the big thing for me here. Gavin Sawchuk is currently listed at 5'11", 185. He looks 185. I don't think that is necessarily an incorrect weight listing for him. And when I watch him play, I don't know that he has the frame to get up to above 205 or so. I'm not comfortable projecting him over that. So that right away limits you to the point where I probably can't consider you for my tier 1. You're the likelihood of you being a true NFL bell cow in a day and age where there are so few of them is probably pretty small. What I will say about him, though, he's very slippery between the tackles. He's really one of those guys that can make themselves small and hit that hole that maybe a lot of other backs could not. Very good one cut back, and in the right system, I think that he can really excel there. And his feet are always moving, and I think that kind of ties into those first 2 points where he's constantly kind of looking for that lane, for that little hole that he can press, and he's gone. The other thing that I will say, for 185, he never blew me away with his athleticism. I thought he was a good athlete, but if you're going to be undersized, you got to be fast, fast, fast. And I never really saw that from him. So for me, those are kinds of the things that knocked him down my list a little bit. But still, number 12 in a really good class. He might have been 7 or 8, or maybe even a little bit higher than that last year.
Yeah, so I think he has more speed than he's given credit for on the tape. Now, I was lucky enough to get to talk to him a little bit. I did an interview article for him. We put up on campus2canton.com. I do think that he's got a little bit more speed than shows on tape. I wish I could remember off the top of my head. I should have done a better job of looking this up. But he had a really good 40 time, and then he supposedly would have ran an even better one, but he ended up tearing his hamstring. I'm trying to pull up the message he sent me so I could kind of talk about this really quick, which is just, wonderful video. So he ran a 10.6 to 100 meter, but that was with a hurt hamstring. He believes he could have ran a 10.5. So I asked like our stats guys, like, how that translates to, because I don't know if that's good or bad. I'm not a track person. And I was told that's like almost short of like elite tier speed. I agree with you that it does not really show that on here. So I adjusted my rankings a little bit based on, I'm taking him in his word that he can run that 10.5, and maybe that it's just not showing well on here. Some of the things that I liked about him, I do agree that obviously beating at 185 is not great, but I do think he's got really good contact balance and really good lower body strength, which I do think matters even going into college and possibly the NFL level if he cannot get up over the 200. If he's got that good lower body strength that he can continue driving players, it's good. I like his vision. We all know, if you guys have listened to me, that's a big thing for me. I'm really big. It's helped me, but it's also hurt me very badly. So take that with a grain of salt.
Is that your favorite Marvel superhero? Yeah.
It is. Oh yeah, love Vision. Great. He's got like probably the hottest Marvel chick as well, right? And Scarlet Witch. I mean, she's up there. She's probably top 3 or 4. So I do think he's got decent hands. We just talked about it earlier. 31 catches. I'd like to see more of that. And it's one of the things I saw he actually just on Huddle earlier this week uploaded a couple more games. So something I'm going to go in and look for to see if he's got any more catches. Some of that I think may be kind of the high school, the way that they run their plays. There is one of the things that he brought up. He said they don't give him that many opportunities, but it is something he works on, and he works on it with Christian McCaffrey in the offseason, which I do think is kind of cool that he's able to work with a guy who's, he's one of the best running backs when he's healthy on the field in the NFL. And last but not least, I think he's got really quick feet and he is bursty. My biggest thing on here I put is size. That is my biggest question for him as well. But if he can translate that speed that he says he has, I think that he is going to be one of the better backs in this class. That's why he's up there at 4 for me. So let's go ahead and just throw up some of the traits that we talked about so you guys can see. That's kind of the way that I have it set up for him. Again, most of that is more me than Austin because I do like him a lot more. But is there any way that you could see him, say that he does, because you said like you want to see that speed out of him. He goes out there, does some of that speed, if he shows that speed, does that boost him up at all for you?
It would, yeah. Because I think the only way for a guy like that, I forget what the presumed, but the average or, like the greatest weight expectancy you can have for some of these guys to gain in college is about 18 pounds. So that would put him at 203 or so. If he shows elite speed, then yeah, I think that makes it a little more forgivable than some of these guys that come in and don't have that.
All right, so the next big thing here with him is we just talked about he is going to Oklahoma. We're seeing some more of the Oklahoma talk for Raleek Brown, who's another guy in this class that's going there. The biggest thing, they've got a couple incumbent running backs on the roster right now, Marcus Major, and I do think there's a serious possibility that Eric Gray comes back with how poor his season has been this year. If that happens, obviously we're projecting way into the future now. If we're talking next year, freshman season draft time, does that at all come into your mind when you're looking at a Gavin Sawchuk? And let's just say Eric Gray is back. You got Marcus Major there. Does that affect your thinking at all? I'm like, well, he's going into this backfield that could be loaded. He may not see time. A Kendall Milton, we may not see him touch the field for 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, so we talked a little bit about this before the show here. My first pass through of these guys, my first ranking here, I don't factor in situation at all. So putting him at 12 for me is not considering those things. Once we get into spring and we start getting an idea of if Eric Gray's coming back, what Marcus Major's doing, how, if he enrolls early, him versus Raleek Brown, who's doing what, those will all impact him. And it would, because I think he's going to be fairly expensive in drafts this year. I actually would be shocked if he's not. And so if it turns out that there's a situation where he's not taking control of that backfield, it's very, very murky, then I'll probably be avoiding at cost, especially because he's what, the RB5, I believe, in the composite. So it's a wait and see definitely for me.
That's staying. I completely X'd out. I was trying to get ready for the next running back we're going to talk about, and I just hit the X button on the StreamYard. So that was great. Great producing on my end. So, all right. So I'm for the most part with you there. When there's certain running backs that I really like, and he's one of them. Like I said, I've got him at 4, as you can see right there under my name. Those are the kind of guys that it would not affect me one bit. I still, you guys actually at the time of that we're recording this just talked about Kendall Milton a little bit with Felix Sharp on the Campus Life pod. And you guys are talking about how you're a little bit worried about him. He hasn't really done much. He's kind of been buried in that backfield. We thought we'd see more of him. I'll worry about that a couple years down the line. I truly believe enough in this kid's talent that he'll find a way to get onto the field. And so I don't worry about it as much. More for me is what happens between him and Raleek Brown, because I don't know that Oklahoma is going to be a team that can have both those guys succeed enough that it produces draft capital. Yeah,
so that's the part that hurts.
Yeah, so for me, that would be my biggest concern, is like going into that freshman draft. Have we heard anything about if they favor one or the other? Because then that might help me, because I don't have them too far apart in what happens next. So next up is Arlen Harris Jr. I do not have him in my top 12. This is one of the guys that we differ on here. He's committed to Stanford, played at a Lutheran St. Charles County. These are some of the stats that he has put up so far in high school. So fairly impressive. I mean, 46 rushing touchdowns, 2,500 rushing yards, 21 catches for 219 yards. I'm going to let you kind of go here with Arlen, because I don't have him ranked in my top 12. I have him at 14. So he is a guy that I like. As I mentioned earlier, my 15, he's in my tier 3. Those 15 guys, I like all of them. You have him, though, at 11, which I believe then puts him in your tier 3 as well. So similar tiers, but a little bit separated on the difference for him.
Yeah, I really like Arlen Harris. Him and actually the next guy we're talking about as well. He runs really angry, which I kind of like out of a running back. He's willing to stiff arm a guy into the dirt. There's a bunch of instances of him doing that in his high school tape. He's a nice mover for his size. He's listed at 189, so 190. We'll call him 190. The 18 pounds puts him in the range there, still a little under what you would like to see. But he looks like he also has the frame to gain a little bit more. He's almost 6 feet tall there. I think he looks a little more stout than someone like Gavin Sawchuk does. He's just physical, and combining that with the burst there, I mean, you can kind of see it on some of these plays. He is breaking away once he kind of puts a foot in the dirt. I mean, watch this one here. He just kind of beats that guy, and all of a sudden turns on the jetpacks, and it's difficult. Now, there are some level of competition questions here on some of these plays that you can see that guy just totally whiff on that tackle on the sideline. But the tools are there for sure. And so I think he's intriguing, especially. I know I said I don't factor a landing spot into these at all, but he's a guy that the flag is going up a little bit. He's going to be at Stanford. He might be a steal to get a few years of production out of him in drafts this upcoming year.
Yeah, I mean, Stanford's done a pretty good job of producing running backs as well. I mean, I'm obviously going back to Christian McCaffrey, but Bryce Love was a really good producer in college. And I think had he come out the year prior to his final year, he probably would have gotten better draft capital, maybe had a chance to do something in the NFL. Obviously, he suffered a lot of injuries in the NFL. Austin Jones was a guy that me and Colin really liked coming in this year. Now, he hasn't looked that good. They do have E.J. Smith there, Emmitt Smith's son, who I still have high hopes for. The biggest thing that I took away from him, obviously, again, the size, and I do like that he moves well for his size as well, but that he's very patient. And I like that. I like that once he seems to see wherever he's going, he hits it and he goes. So I do like that about him. Again, I don't feel like I dislike him too much and having him at 14. He's still in my tier 3, and I do like him going to, because they still got David Shaw there, who's shown the ability to produce these guys, possibly even get them NFL draft capital, and likely going to be able to produce in college, as you said. So one of the guys that I'm definitely looking at, and I don't know that he's going to be high up. Where do you have where he is in the composite and in the rankings for the class?
In the composite, he is number 24.
Okay.
So not super high. But I mean, people are getting more and more savvy each year on these drafts. I think, other people will see the Stanford and that'll turn their attention a little bit, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I put on here, I was trying to see, so he's 19. I was trying to pull that up really quick. 19 on 24/7, who I think, and obviously you get a chance to talk with Travis May as well. He's kind of, I don't know that he ever released that article, but in a college chat that we're in, he talked about how they've over the past, I can't remember how many years he went back, have proven to be like the best when it comes to scouting, improving like who these guys will be and how well they'll produce. So that they are, they're definitely a group that I pay more attention to when they talk about players. So they have him up at 19. So you're right. He may be a guy that gets a little bit more love, and we'll see what happens with his senior year stuff that's on there. I mean, he's got really, as I put, stiff arm, dead leg, good burst, contact balance, very patient runner. So definitely one of an interesting guy. So this is my guy, and I'm interested to see if you've even looked at him, if you have anything on him. Quinshon Judkins. And he's currently not committed to anywhere. No?
I've watched him, yeah.
You don't like him at all?
He's my RB32.
Woo! Okay, so there we have an even bigger difference now. All right, so I guess I'll start with, so here's his stats we've been doing with all of them. He's got 257 carries, 2,613 yards, 41 touchdowns, 18 receptions. So I didn't know you had him. I just put not ranked because I didn't know where you had him. I have him as RB11.
Might as well be. No, okay. I'm just kidding.
So
I'm just kidding.
What is it about him you don't like before I go in and talk about what I do like about him?
So I liked some things about him, and I think let me check and see what tier I have him in. I have him in my tier 5, which is a guy that I think can probably at some point produce in college. I'm just not banking on any sort of NFL success. And obviously these things are very fluid, guys. I'm not locking these guys, a 17-year-old kid, into a box saying this dude's never making the NFL. But these are just, if I have a range of outcomes and, I rolled the dice 1,000 times, how many ends up a certain way. And that's just what the tier I have him in right now. He's aggressive. He's very aggressive. Yeah. He's solid laterally. He has a little bit of juice, straight line athlete. I don't think that he's a great side to side guy. Some pass catching experience. The big thing for me that killed me when I watched him, I think he is very stiff in the hips. And those are just not stylistically. It's like I didn't like Jalen Berger very much because he's a very stiff runner. It's just an archetype that I don't like. And so when I watched him, it just I shades of Jalen Berger, of kind of James Conner-ish. They're guys that can be successful. I just don't necessarily bet on them.
So, I mean, maybe the Jalen Berger thing is why I like him, because I did like Jalen Berger. I think he's got more speed than James Conner. So, what I have here for him, and I'm not going to lie, I feel a little bit bad about myself now because I thought maybe you just hadn't had a chance to watch him yet. I do like his burst. I do agree with you. I put here that I am worried about his lateral agility. He is a straight line guy, but I also do think he's also a very good receiver, and I like his contact balance as well. I think his speed is what separates him. And if he can get somewhere that uses, I also don't like that. He's like, if he gets to the outside, he's gone. But I feel like that's almost all he does. You don't really see a lot of runs up the middle for him. But I do like what he can do.
I wrote level of competition, question mark, because I legitimately don't know. But the fact that he's able to get the edge so often on these, and that's what he wants, made me wonder a little bit about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot like I'm not comparing him because I think the guy I'm about to mention here is a lot better, but when I watch Nicholas Singleton, the same thing is like that dude gets to, he's to the edge every single play and he's gone, and it's just kind of like, is he gonna be that good in college? But I really do think he's got incredible speed. It's a lean toward Ole Miss right now, which I find interesting. Now, obviously, there's a lot of talk recent. Maybe Lane Kiffin won't be there anymore, but I do think if he could go to that offense and produce, he could produce on the college side. I do think he's got some shot at the NFL, but a lot of it was, I think, his speed, very good receiver, and then him possibly going to Ole Miss. I like his upside a lot. I put him at somewhere at 11 because I think he's a guy you can also steal. I don't think anybody is talking about him. I didn't pull up where he's at on 24/7, but I'm pretty sure he's low. I don't think he's very high up there in the composite or
He's 43 in the composite, and 24/7 has him at 46. So
okay,
pretty much
so
in line there with that. Yeah.
yeah, so he's fairly low on there. I think he's going to rise up a little bit. He's a guy that I really like. So he's now our biggest difference. I thought Gavin Sawchuk was going to be that. No, it's definitely Judkins here, which I'm okay with. I'm okay with. I'm usually wrong on running backs anyway. So
Hey,
take that with a
that's
grain of
still
salt.
higher than what 24/7 has him at. So I mean, we're both on the same page that we think he's better than what he's rated as.
Yeah, but like I said, good speed for his side. Like that's the biggest thing for him. And hands. Like he does do a lot of receiving in those. And I haven't got the chance to watch any of his senior stuff, but he's a guy that I really like. So next up, we are going to talk about Ollie Gordon, who is not committed yet, I believe, but he's heavily leaning towards somewhere. I can't. There was someone that like when I was looking at this, it showed that they were possibly hard committing somewhere, but now I can't remember who it was.
I mean,
But
he is committed to Oklahoma State, but I don't know how hard
maybe
of a commit that is.
maybe he's who it was. I guess I could have looked that up here while I was getting ready to switch over. I was just so excited about talking about my guy that you fucking hate. Yes, hard commit to Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State. He's a hard commit to Oklahoma State. So it's an interesting spot for him. Since I've got it up here, he is the 25th running back in composite and number 33 for 24/7 Sports. We do both have him ranked. I'll throw that up here really quick. Does go to Trinity in Texas, so I might try and go see him at some point. I have him as he's my RB12. He's RB10 for you. So we both have him in our top 12, both in our tier 3. His stats right here for high school, again, all these guys are right around. You're going to see a couple guys who are like clearly separated as we get further into the ranks on some of these stats. It's just a little bit ridiculous. But go ahead, give us your thoughts here on Ollie Gordon.
Yeah, he's in Texas. That's a good thing. He's produced very, very well there. I think sometimes if I come down to a tiebreaker between some guys, the guy that's produced at a mega school in Texas kind of gets the bump. 6'1", 210, 2 thumbs way up. We're not projecting any size gain if we don't have to, and I think he can still gain a few pounds and not lose anything there. He's got a nice frame. Really, he's a build-up speed kind of guy, but I don't necessarily mind that for the running back position, long strider type. But he's very physical. And I said, Arlen Harris really likes to stiff arm guys. Ollie Gordon will stiff arm you past the dirt. Like whatever's below that, I don't know all the levels of the earth that we learned in 3rd grade science class, but he pushes you down into those and is happy to do it. And I think his hands look solid from the times that I saw him catch passes. Again, the high school guys, as we said, you don't always necessarily get a chance to show that. The only concern I have about him, he's a little oddly built. What I mean by that is he has like really skinny lower legs. And I know this, you kind of body type scout when you watch some of these guys, and generally like these NFL guys, you don't see a lot of running backs with those really skinny lower legs. So that is slightly concerning to me, but I think he can go to Oklahoma State and be their main guy for a couple years, and he's really talented.
Yeah, so I was trying to get his stuff up here, but this dude like uploads every single run that he does on his huddle. I did not realize
yes, he
that.
Does. Yes, he does.
I mean, he's very proud of what he does. But, I mean, he is a good running back. I almost mostly agree with everything you put here. I mean, I like Judkins a little bit more, so I think he's got a little bit more speed, but I think he is a very good overall back, so I'm not gonna not really disagree with you much here. As you can see, that's a nice little run right there. I was hoping to find something better, but he literally just has like not even just his, like he's got every single like Trinity high school game recap up on there and everything. So that is some of the traits that we see between the two of us: physical runner, nice vision, good burst, patience, and good hands, as Austin mentioned there. For Ollie Gordon, as you mentioned, he is committed to Oklahoma State. It's a little bit of a muddled backfield. Again, I know we mentioned this earlier with the Oklahoma stuff. What does that do for you possibly moving forward? I mean, I'm trying to think off the top of my head how many Oklahoma State guys have even made it into the NFL. I know you're not supposed to scout the helmet, you scout the player, but I do think that has to matter just a little bit.
They've done a great job. So, I mean, their last couple backs have been Chuba Hubbard, Justice Hill, and the guy before Justice Hill made it too. I'm blanking on the name, but they've put some guys into the NFL. So that and actually, I mean, if you look at the other guys in that backfield now, like Jalen Warren's going to be gone, Desmond Jackson's going to be gone. I know you had talked a little bit about DeAndre Glass, who was a highly rated kid that came in there. He's in the portal, so I mean, there actually is a little bit of uncertainty there. I'm not sure how many freshmen have gotten serious run under Mike Gundy there. He doesn't seem like the kind of guy that messes around with freshmen too much, but there's certainly going to be opportunity there for him.
Yeah, and I mean, that's all that you can really ask for. And not all these guys are going to go into, clear situations where there's nobody there in front of them and they are immediately going to get onto the field. So just getting some kind of production from these guys is going to, it's always good, from what I hear from, as Felix likes to say, and I do think it's kind of funny that he says it, the spreadsheet simps, getting that freshman production is key. So we want to see that from some of these guys. All right. Next
and
up
just
is
the back before them was Chris Carson.
Chris Carson. Gotcha. So, okay, there you go.
Yeah. So I mean, it's some good backs.
Yeah, absolutely. Is Tevin White, 6'1", 200 pounds, 4-star. I believe all the guys that we have on our list are 4-stars, actually, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe Quinshon wasn't. I can't remember. I put it on here. Let's look.
Judkins is definitely not a 4-star. Yeah.
Yikes. Oh, who put that guy on here? Anyways, so let's
Sean Tucker, baby. I mean, there's guys every year.
That's very true. When it happens, I'm going to be like retweeting this video like crazy. But if it doesn't, it might get deleted off the Campus to Canton feed. Who knows?
Who's to say?
All right, so Tevin White, he is committed to Arizona State out of North Stafford High School. Again, fairly similar stats to a lot of the guys that we're going to be talking about here. I believe you have him one spot higher than me. Yes, so 9 and 10. Again, we're almost in lockstep here on Tevin White. I finally got this video ready to go before we started talking about him for once. So, and then of course I did it wrong. So tell us a little bit your thoughts here on Tevin White.
The first time I sat down to watch Tevin White, I was like, this dude's a receiver. Why is this kid listed as a running back? Because the first 3 minutes of his huddle stuff is all him catching passes, and he's not lined up in the backfield as he's doing it either. And then it flips to the running back stuff, and you're like, okay, he's just a very, very good receiver. That's just kind of the player he is. He's got that dual threat ability there. He's shown it, even though the reception numbers aren't necessarily super high. Really nice hands. I think bare minimum he can go somewhere and be a pass catching back, and he's already 6'1", 200. So that's excellent. Beyond that, I think, good vision. He shows that he can kind of manipulate defenders in the open field, which I think is a little bit of an advanced skill. You kind of learn it with experience. Has some nice footwork. So I like him a lot, honestly. And it hurts to say, he reminds me a little bit in high school of EJ Smith, who we haven't seen do a lot yet there at Stanford, but I'm hoping Tevin White, some coaching staff knows how to use him and he can get on the field quickly.
Yeah, so I actually think Arizona State may be a great place for him to land because of what they're doing with Rachaad White. And I think that he could easily do that. I was trying to find the huddle that you were talking about because it's not only is it like receivers, like the first play makes a really good catch, and then the second highlight, he's out wide as like a wide receiver, and then he makes a nice one-handed catch down the sideline. So yeah, he's a very good wide receiver. And I really like, again, that he's going to Arizona State because I want to say he's almost the exact same size as Rachaad White. Isn't he minus 15 pounds or something like that? I think Rachaad White is close to 220. So
yeah, but he was listed at 195 coming into this offseason though. So I mean, he's gained weight.
Okay, so
he's right in line with it.
So, I mean, the fact that we're seeing what Rachaad White has done in that, now you've got Tevin White going in there, I think could really benefit him and what we've seen him do as a receiver. I mean, he's a guy that Felix has been on all this year, and now has really kind of, I think, improved his draft capital with the way he's played. I've got on here that I really like his vision. I do think he's very fast as well. The hands are really good. I almost would say I don't even think he would get pegged as even a wide receiver or a receiving back, although I agree with what you were saying because of how good he is. But because of his size, I think he just has the size-speed combination with the hands to, I think, possibly become a workhorse back, a full 3-down back. And for that guy to be this low in our rankings too, I think just speaks to how good the rest of this class is. But he's also a very patient runner. I'm excited to see him go to Arizona State because right now, I mean, you've got White who can come out this year, and then Chip and Daniel Nagata, who I don't know what's going on with him. We haven't seen Nagata at all, I feel like, this season. So do one of those guys transfer? And if so, do we possibly see White kind of take over that backfield in 2023? That would be awesome, I think, to see. He would be, a sophomore at that point. So we'll see what happens with him. But I think he's one of those guys that really, projecting forward, could be a guy who really shoots up our ranks here. Just with everything he can do. I mean, he can line up anywhere, good footwork, vision. I like that he hits the cutback lanes. I think that you put that on yours as well, and I agree with you on that. I mean, overall, he is a very, very interesting back. Speaking of Chip Trianum and Daniel Nagata, who are there right now, do you think we've seen Chip? I mean, you were much higher on Chip than I think anybody else at the site, and he's looked good at times this year, but been a little bit beat up. Do you think, with as good as Chip we expect him to be, that we see Tevin White at all next year, assuming Rachaad White goes into the NFL?
Oh man, they like to run a lot of backs out there, and yeah, they do have Ngata and Chip. So I don't know if we would see him a lot. But the alternate, it was between Penn State and Arizona State. If he gone to Penn State, he might as well have been like in the witness protection program. We never would have heard from him. So the Arizona State was the better of the two outcomes. Glad he's going there, and I do think he can do the Rachaad White role. It's a very good point. I think that would be a great one for him in a year or two.
Yeah, so I'm excited to see how that works out. I mean, Chip's a pretty good receiver as well. So I think they've just done a really good job these past couple years with running backs, and I'm interested to see. I think, like I said, that's a perfect landing spot for him. And if he can kind of produce in that way, even earlier than we saw Rachaad White produce, it could really work out for him. All right, let's jump into here now. Terrance Gibbs, 6'1", 194-star. He's committed to Florida, played at Winter Park. Fairly good rushing stats and receiving stats. Again, pretty in line with a lot of these other guys here. I'm gonna kind of pivot here to him going to Florida. Does anyone hurt Gibbs and take a chance on him for, I don't know what I was talking about here. Or do you have a concern for the Florida system at all here with Terrance Gibbs going there?
I don't have a concern for the system. My big concern with him is that I believe now that he did not play his junior year because of a significant knee injury. And as far as I remember, he also has been out this season. It was a very significant knee injury. And Florida's training staff and everything apparently has kind of given the green light, but it's still kind of a scary thing to bet on, because I think just based on talent, like if he had not been hurt junior year, he might very well be in that tier 1 for me. But not having seen him play in 2 years and coming off that, it's a little scary to project.
Yeah, and I mean, as you can see here, like the last highlights we have is his sophomore season stuff. So that's kind of, you're having to go back now at this point, by the time he comes out, almost 2 years to kind of look at. But he's got very exciting film to watch. It's just kind of, as you mentioned, as a guessing game a little bit. And we also don't know what Florida may be. I mean, I would assume Dan Mullen may still be there, but there's a lot of rumblings that he may move on, or he's on the hot seat now with Coach O being gone. Florida had a pretty deep set of running backs when I last looked at their roster, but I think it's fair to say he may be the best. I mean, Demarcus Bowman, we haven't even seen really this year. I still don't know what's going on with him, but just a little bit of thoughts here on what you saw to give sophomore tape.
Yeah, so I mean, he's a really good athlete, especially for his size, and he's listed at over 200 pounds. So a really good thing there. I mean, you can just watch his ability to stop start on some of these clips. I'm not generally a guy for kind of those sudden type of athletes, but he the way he moves at that size for a high schooler really should not be possible. And he's also just very strong. He just shrugged off 3 dudes there like they were nothing. He kind of has that aggressive, loose running style that I think is just rare. You can tell he's just a natural. Like if you never give him any coaching and you just handed him a ball and said, go run, you feel like he could still go and just and break a 60-yard touchdown. So I really, really like him. The only thing that's holding him back is going to be the knee. and I'm worried that we never get to see the real him because of that.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing, I guess, for him will be when he gets to Florida and we get to see any kind of spring stuff. How does he look? Does he look fully recovered? Because again, you've mentioned we haven't really heard much about it either, which has got to be a little bit concerning for everybody, especially because he's into his senior season here. No, I 100% agree with you. You see the speed as well. He played track. I think some of the way that he runs as well, you can attribute to that. I really like him. I didn't realize he hadn't played at all this year. I knew he had the injury in his junior season. I did not know that he did not play at all his senior season either. So that's a little bit that is a little bit concerning. I did not realize that. That's the wrong player. So we've got him set up one spot. I'm one spot behind you. You've got him at 8 in your rankings. I have him at 9. That's some of the limited kind of stuff that we saw from him. Again, kind of hard to tell. You're going back almost 2 years. I don't know that some of that stuff would change. Maybe it takes him a little bit. I think that maybe the one thing he loses some of his explosiveness and burst with that knee injury, maybe. But I'd like to see. Obviously, I'd love to see if he could get back on the field at all as a senior. But since he hasn't right now, that is definitely something to be concerned about. Next up, we have got Raleek Brown. We mentioned earlier when we talked about Gavin Sawchuk that those two are kind of very similar in the way that they play. He is also committed to Oklahoma, went to Mater Day. Let's dive in a little bit more into that side of things. As I mentioned, we were going to wait until we got to this part. There are no stats on him that I could find anywhere. So that's kind of one of the things. There's a couple players you guys will see on here. I could not find any stats on him. So he's been good. And as you're going to see here when we pull up the tape in a minute, that he's a very fun prospect to watch. Don't know what really he's been doing in high school unless you go back in and read some of the things. But he is going to Oklahoma with Sawchuk. Is there any chance that both of these guys can produce and kind of keep the value we think they might be able to have in college and go into the NFL if they're both there at Oklahoma?
So Rayleigh Brown is Reggie Bush-ish in the sense that he is always looking to hit the home run. He is always looking to do something kind of crazy. You know, he'll run one direction on the field, kind of sidestep 2 or 3 guys, and then completely reverse direction and bring around the other side of the field. I mean, that's the kind of player he is at 5'8", 185. He's smaller than Sawchuk, and as many questions I had about Sawchuk gaining that weight, I have even more concerns about Raleek Brown. With how athletic and shifty he is, though, I have a feeling that there will always be some sort of role for him as long as he proves himself there at Oklahoma. The burst is insane. I mean, you'll be able to see it on some of these clips here. He looks like he was shot out of a cannon as soon as he wants to kind of work his way upfield. And he can hit those small holes. Very, very elusive. But yeah, the problems for me are going to be getting up to over 200 pounds. I'm not sure if he'll be able to do it. And then sometimes he everybody wants to be Reggie Bush or Barry Sanders, but there's very few guys that can actually do that. That's hence why there's really only 2 guys you can think of that when it comes to that. And so, it's a rare thing. Can he continue to work the way he does? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. The biggest thing I had was his size. I mean, I like Sawchuk, and as you mentioned, he's even smaller than Sawchuk, but the speed is there, the burst is there. He's very twitchy. I do think he's very explosive laterally as well. How quickly he can move side to side and hit things, I really do think he's good. He supposedly has done a lot of stuff in the return game, which I do think is huge because that can help you get on the field even more as a college player and possibly as an NFL player. I was trying to pull up his 247 because I know they're high on him. So in the composite, he's RB2. 247 has him at RB5. So whether that's just because of how good he's looked in high school, they don't seem to be too worried about his size. It's not even the 185. It's more the 5'8" that I'm worried about. Like that's kind of because even if he puts on a little bit of weight, say he gets up to, he puts on 15 pounds and gets up to 200 and keeps most of that speed and burst. It's the 5'8" that I worry about a little bit. But if he can show us any kind of lower body strength and the ability to take on tackles, then I think he's going to be perfectly fine. I mean, he can be used anywhere. I think he can be a very good receiver. I mean, just watching this, I mean, how quick he moves in and out and making defenders miss. I think it's going to be fun to watch because the Big 12 doesn't know how to play defense either. So I do think he's going to be able to at least produce once he gets to Oklahoma. And I mean, just seeing him possibly, I mean, I really hope Eric Gray doesn't come back next year. If you could see him and Sawchuk in that backfield with Caleb Williams, I mean, that's a scary defense or scary offense to even think about. But I'm with you. I like him. I was trying to, let's see here. So where we have him in our ranks, because I know we are a little bit separate. Oh, never mind. I thought we were separated on him. We both have him at 7. So
look at us go.
The one guy we probably agree on the most, it seems here, outside of like Jadon Blue, but that's kind of like that's a home run assessment right there. So contact balance, elusiveness, and burst are the big things here with him. Again, size, and we'll see if he can and gain weight. Obviously, he's not going to really grow much more than the 5'8". And I will say I don't think we've ever seen high schools really embellish on that. So I don't think he shows up to Oklahoma and then we find out he's like 5'7" or 5'6", like we've seen these colleges do over the past couple years. Like, oh yeah, he's 6'4", and then he goes to the combine and he's actually like 5'11". I do think he's probably right around 5'8". Can he put on a little bit more weight once he gets into a college weightlifting program?
I mean, Deuce Vaughn's doing it in that same conference right now at Kansas State.
True.
So, I mean, it's definitely possible, and that's not like I'm not 7 is a good ranking, and I think he's going to be a good player. It's just when you're trying to project to the NFL multiple steps away.
Right.
I mean, we talk about Deuce Vaughn, and we say, what can Deuce Vaughn be? This kid's 10 pounds heavier, but it's going to be the same discussion.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the fair part to say, right? So, and I'll answer it for me, and then obviously you can before we get into Le'Veon Moss here. I feel the most comfortable that my top 4, who are my tier 1, can go into college, produce in college, and then make it to the NFL. Couple questions about my tier 2 guys now. Raleek Brown does fall into my tier 2. And then the tier 3 guys, I think, are probably more college guys, like, have a shot, which I think you may have actually just said this at the beginning of the episode, and I'm now just somewhat repeating you. My tier 3 guys, I think I agree with you then, if that's what you were saying, that they have a shot, but I'm not really believing much in them getting into the NFL and doing anything.
They're very situational, or like there's a big question that needs to be answered. Whereas the guys, as you work your way down the pyramid, more and more questions each of these guys kind of have, more and more issues. So yeah, but he's a tier 2 guy for me. So yeah, I mean, I think there will be a rule for him. How big of a rule? Tariq Cohen, I mean, Nyheim Hines, that class of player, perhaps.
And I mean, hey, we've seen both of those guys produce tier 1. I shouldn't say tier RB1 seasons in the NFL because of the way they were used by their coaches. We talk a lot about it. There's really RB. It seems like, especially in the NFL, is moving away from those like workhorse back systems and going to these 2 running back systems. So there may be a realistic shot, especially with how explosive he is. If he ends up on a team that uses him the right way, I mean, he could end up being a very productive NFL running back. So, All right, let's talk Le'Veon Moss. 6 foot 194 star, not currently committed anywhere. Estroma, I'm not really 100% sure how to say where it is exactly. He goes to high school or plays high school ball, but his stats here: 113.54 rushing yards, 16 rushing touchdowns, just 94 carries. Does not do much in the receiving game. So that's kind of, at least stats-wise, what we've got here. Verified. One of the few guys I was able to get verified stuff for, which I do think is big. What does this tell you? Do you care much about this stuff? I guess I should ask first. We've got a verified 40 of 4.65, 32.8 vertical, 23 in the 200 meter shuttle, 100 meter. Like, how do you view some of this stuff?
It matters to me if I watch and the numbers that are verified look nothing like what I'm watching. And that's kind of the Gavin Sawchuk thing we were talking about earlier, where he said, he supposedly can run a 10.5 100, which translates to a rough 4.4 something 40. I believe, trying to do the quick math there in my head. And then you watch and you're like, this is like a 4.55 or higher guy at the moment, which is no shame for high school, but I mean, that's nowhere near. I think for Moss, it does match 4.65. I mean, that's a twitchy kind of guy with that 33-inch vert there. I mean, I think those things both match what we saw. So now we're cooking. The numbers look pretty solid there. And so, yeah, that's what I do with those numbers. What are you doing with them?
I don't really care much, if I'm gonna be honest. When it's coming out of high school, I look at it and it's nice to know, especially because like we talked obviously about pre-show. Or maybe I mentioned this when I was talking about Gavin Sawchuk. I asked some of the guys that pay attention to that stuff, like how much that really matters, and they kind of gave me a breakdown of like, well, if you run this fast, and it likely means you have like this elite speed or good speed, bad speed. I want to see how much that I guess I pretty much what you said. I want to see if that translates onto the film and into college, because I've seen some of these guys who come in here with like really good 40s in high school, and then you just don't see it. You just mentioned Gavin Sawchuk. I mean, he says that he's been timed at this and done this, but I'll even be honest, like when you watch some of his high school film, you don't necessarily see that speed there that he says he has. So is that because he can run with shorts on, but maybe with the pads on, he's just not quite as fast? I mean, what's the difference? I mean, everybody's faster at the Underwear Olympics, right? You don't always see that stuff pop up on the NFL field. So let's I'll pull his rank up for us really quick. So you have him at 6, I have him at 8. Go ahead and give us a little bit more of your breakdown here on Moss.
Yeah, so like I said previously, I mean, very, very twitchy for his size at 190. And again, we're in the ballpark of size where I'm comfortable thinking that he can project up into that preferred weight zone. Not 220, obviously, but I think 208 will suffice, and that's about what he can hit. He's very fluid. He's not a sudden guy, but that's okay. I actually generally prefer more fluid guys at running back, so that's a good thing. He's really he shows flashes of the ability to sift through traffic well. I think that's kind of a next level type of skill. We'll talk about some of the guys that I have in my tier 1, and that's what really starts separating those guys for me, is they already have kind of developed that ability to set up the second and third level of blockers, gain leverage that way, and kind of shrug off first and second tackles. So he's really, really good at all those things. My knock on him, he plays a little out of control at times. He can get a little ahead of himself. That's a big no for me. But I think that's something that can be coached out of somebody, especially somebody so young. So I'm hopeful that he can do that, and I'm interested to see where he ends up playing.
Was a catch right there, so that's good to
Yeah.
see. I love when these guys put that this kind of stuff on their huddle stuff, the big dog woof woof status. So yeah, so I do like. I think he's got great long speed. I believe he played track, so that I think shows a little bit here on the film. We just showed that he ran a 4.67 or 4.65. I think he's very good at that. It's kind of like one cut and gone. Like and I like that about him. It's one of the things I talked about with Gavin Sawchuk as well. Like I like that. And some of that I will say with Gavin, which I don't necessarily see here with Moss, is Gavin's offensive line, I think, is really good. That like if you go and watch his stuff, the hole that they open for Gavin is a lot bigger than what I think I saw sometimes with Moss. So when Gavin hits his one cut and gone, he's got a massive hole to get through. Le'Veon, I think, is a little bit more patient. I mean, the speed right there. There's someone else, and I can't remember who it is. It may be Katron Allen, who we're about to look at. There's someone who the speed that they have, like the way that they left some guys behind, it's just ridiculous. But I like Moss's acceleration. I do think that he gets downhill very quickly. We just saw the reception there, so that's something I want to look more into. Again, those stats were before his senior year. This is mid-season stuff right here from his senior season. So we're actually getting the most up-to-date huddle look right here. I haven't watched any of this stuff. Like I said, I didn't even realize he had a reception until we just watched it there. That is something I'd like to see more of. He is going to LSU, which we know has Armani Goodwin and Corey Kiner, who Corey Kiner's been pretty good at times this year. How does that factor in anything when you're looking at Moss and knowing that he's going to LSU?
So just to toss out there, while the crystal balls predict that he is going to LSU, he is not committed anywhere yet.
Yes, correct.
And he was actually at that big, for those that are not super into recruiting, there was a big Texas A&M barbecue a couple weeks ago that a ton of big-time recruits were at. He was one of them, and a lot of them either immediately committed to Texas A&M or are strong leans. So I actually kind of suspect that he'll end up committing to Texas A&M if I had to guess. But gotcha. I do not know that for sure. But regardless, if he goes to LSU, I mean, we'll wait and see. I don't love Kiner or Goodwin. Okay. I had them both as like borderline tier 2, tier 3 guys. Moss is firmly in my tier 2. But the coaching staff there will shake things up. I don't know how to read the LSU running back situation unless you're just an amazing talent at running back there. Yeah, I'll tease that here for a few minutes later. I don't love LSU as a spot, but I'm hoping Texas A&M is where he goes.
Yeah, I mean, and I should mention he was at one point committed to Alabama and then kind of opted out of going there, which I mean makes sense with some of the running backs they brought in there. I would be interested to see if he goes to Texas A&M because I liked LJ Johnson. He was one of the other guys outside of Travion that I really liked last year. I'd be interested to see how that possibly affects him. So I'll pull that off here and throw up his traits here just to kind of give you guys a little bit of, again, a picture here on what we think about him. And I think we're going to cut it there. We're at about an hour.
Yeah.
We got through 6. So I guess you guys let us know what you think about this. I'd like to continue doing stuff with this. I mean, Austin has really dove in a lot deeper than I have been able to on this class. Come back. Maybe we'll come back next week, finish up our top 6, maybe try and do some wide receivers. Quarterbacks is going to be the best one because I know we differ a lot on some of the quarterbacks. So I'd like to sit and talk with Austin on some of the quarterbacks. But let us know what you guys think about this video. You can find us again. We've got our Twitter handles right here on Twitter. Jump in our Discord. Let us know what you guys thought about that. And let us know if you guys disagree with any of it. Tell me how many of you guys just absolutely love Quinshon Judkins and how much Austin is wrong. Because I need
how low
that
I am on
affirmation.
Gavin Sawchuk. Yeah, tell me how
That's
low I am
him
on
too. I'm either one. I need affirmation. I need to feel loved. So tell me how right I am. We all love to tell Austin how wrong he is. So we will be back again sometime very soon with our top 6. That is going to be a really fun episode. So make sure to tune into those guys because those guys are all, I think, some of the better guys in this class. I'm really excited to see those guys hit the college field. We will talk to you guys again. Who knows? A couple days, a week, 2 weeks. We'll see. We'll see.